No more put downs, only put ups. Welcome back to Practice, y'all, where we fuse research and culture to help you develop the mindsets, habits, and skills that you need in order to live out your purpose with confidence. I'm your coach, Dr. Rees, and it's time for us to get better, y'all. Let's grow. So, Mother's Day just passed, and I thought it would be a great idea to be able to spend the next couple episodes talking about some life lessons that I gleaned from my mom and my grandmother and their legacy of how I'm still infusing those through me as a mother, as a coach, as a leader, and a mentor. And I think this is really important because I just did the last episode talking about my grandfather and his legacy, in the 9 lessons that he learned through his 90 years of living. And he's still alive, but my grandmother and my mother are not. And so, as a new mom, and neither one of them got to see me, mom, I feel like it's important to think about how am I carrying on their legacy, not only just as a mom to our son, but also a mom in all these other spaces as I am, that I am, but also as a human being who walks earth, who encounters other people, as a leader who wants to be diligent and lead with wisdom and to be slow to speak and quick to listen and to create a healthy space and healthy energy, with just people that I encounter and people that I mentor. My mom and my grandma were amazing women and human beings that I had the privilege of learning from for 56 and not 56 because I'm not 56, but for 26 and 31 years of my life. And I could do a whole show full of lessons, not just like one show episode, but a whole show of the life lessons that they have given me. But I decided to just break it down into three from each of them. These aren't in any particular order. They aren't, my favorite over something else. They're just three things that I feel like in this season of life that I am fighting to remember myself and to apply myself, but to also bring forth and pour out into other people. Again, not just as a mother to our son, but to having that motherly energy in other spaces and just kind human energy that I believe my mom and grandma possessed. So today we are talking about put ups. They may be like, what's a put up? Everybody's heard of put downs, but what's a put up? Now, it literally is the opposite of that. Like when growing up, my mom did not allow me to put anybody else or myself down. She just wouldn't allow it. And when I say wouldn't allow it, I mean I didn't get punished for it, but I got a stern, empowering, motivating, inspirational conversation about it. Like she never yelled, I rarely got punished, but she was very strict and intentional on all things human empowerment development. And all of the things for her came from her relationship with God, like in Jesus, and wanting to add value to people and wanting to see all people as children of God. Like everything for her came through that lens. And so she firmly believed that there is power in the tongue, as do I, right? Where what I mean by when I say there's power in the tongue, it just means that life and death rest in your tongue. Like if you say something particular about whatever, that you could be speaking life into something, into a situation, or you could be speaking death into something. And the research aspect of that comes right back to um, how we speak is also a reflection of how we think. And it's important for us to recognize that. And I'm really, really, really big on this. And where this lesson popped up for me recently was I was out running, Zakora and I were out running 9.3 miles as we're training for our marathon. And I'm running. And as I'm getting to mile maybe 7 and 8, my mind just starts to want to, pull me in the opposite direction. And this is natural. So for anybody who is, it's like, gets down on themselves for thinking negative thoughts or feels like they shouldn't be thinking, a certain way or feel like you've trained really hard, negative thoughts are normal. That's the first thing we have to remember is negative thoughts are normal. Negative thoughts are natural. However, we don't have to keep them and accept them for what they are. So yes, they're normal, yes, they're natural, but it's our job to be able to take them and say, nope, we're not rocking with these, and throw them away. So I'm running. I'd like to say I'm smashing, but I'm not because I'm on like mile, I don't know, 7 or 8, and I know I still got a little bit more to go. And my mind wants to dog me. My mind just wants to be mad at the situation. And I had to not talk bad about myself. And I literally in that moment was heard my mom's voice say, "Put ups, Risa." And she would always say, "Put ups, Risa, put ups." And it was so funny because she prided herself, not necessarily prided herself, but she knew she was corny and didn't care. And she was like, "What? Well, it may sound corny, but it's right." And I think that is something for anybody who knows me is like, yeah, absolutely. Like something may be corny. I am corny, but there's truth behind it. And so in that moment, I heard her say, "Put ups, Risa." And I was like, "You're right, put ups." And the reason why being able to, number one, catch negative thoughts, and number two, be able to reframe whatever the thought may be is and or replace it with a positive thought or a constructive thought or a thought that adds value, however you want to see it, is the reason why that is important is because it's a matter of life or death. It's a matter of finishing or quitting. It's a matter of succeeding through and past your failures. It's a matter of showing up when you don't want to. It's a matter of remembering you're resilient and leveraging that resilience. It's a matter of growth. It's a matter of expanding your comfort zone, like to train yourself to recognize a negative thought and a negative thought that wants to beat you down, a negative thought that wants to deter you, a negative thought that you know doesn't add value. This is where self awareness comes into play. And a lot of people I feel like that I encounter, that I talk to, they're aware, but they're not, they have a level of self awareness, but they're not really aware of how negative they may be, right? Like they're not as aware of how negative their thought process is, how negative their thought process is about themselves. And that's scary. Like when you don't realize how negative you are about yourself in the world, that is extremely detrimental. And so you may be aware of habits you have, you may be aware of how you talk about certain things, or you may lack awareness. So it's like some people may be aware of themselves in certain attributes, some people lack awareness in certain attributes, and some people have self-awareness but they lack the awareness of how negative they are or of how negative these attributes are. And I think that that's extremely dangerous because when you don't recognize the energy that you possess, when you don't recognize how your energy precedes you, or you don't recognize the energy that you cultivate around something, when you don't recognize that, then it's really out of control. And so this is why I want to talk about this thought process first, because it goes back to, yes, one, having a growth mindset, two, being able to reframe our thinking and not necessarily just have positive thinking, but to be able to learn to con- have constructive self-talk. And this is connected to self-esteem, is because you have to be able to talk to yourself in a certain way. You got to be able to big yourself up. You got to be able to talk to you in the direction that you want to go. And so as I was running, my mind wanted to stop. You're not running that fast. You can't do all these, just different natural things that may come up. And I had to put ups, Risa. So I had to tell myself, you got this. You can do this. You're knocking this out. You're showing up for yourself. You've gone way farther than you ever have before. Like I had to start motivating and encouraging myself. And the unfortunate thing to me, even as I'm thinking about this, so many people think stuff like that is corny. It just, I guess it just goes back to what I said at the beginning, is so many people feel like motivating yourself is corny. And I want you to get out of that. Now, There might be some people listen to this who are like, oh, I don't think that. Cool, cool, cool. But there are some people who struggle to big themselves up because they're afraid of what somebody else thinks. There's some people who struggle to big themselves up because they're afraid of the judgment that they're going to receive from somebody else. Like, you don't want to encourage you because you're afraid of how it might look to somebody else. You don't want to motivate yourself because you're afraid of what other people will think about you in the way that you're motivating yourself. And I think that's sad, because what we're doing is we're giving control to others. We're giving control over ourselves. We're giving control over our mind to other people in society who it's just detrimental at all costs. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice in order for you to be your best coach? What are you willing to sacrifice in order for you to be your biggest motivator and inspiration? Like, what are you willing to the sacrifice needs to just come at, like, man, bump them folks. Like, and here's what's interesting too about what I've noticed with running is when you're running and you pass somebody else, more times than not, they're gonna big you up. They're gonna look at you, give you a head nod, tell you good job, tell you keep going, tell you they're gonna tell you some type of something, and I love it. And not because I just want to get compliments, but I love to see how people who go the extra mile have no problem complimenting other people who have also gone the extra mile, because they know what it takes to get on that extra mile. They know what you had to go through in order to get there. They have no problem looking to their left or to their right and bigging somebody up because they know what it takes. And I firmly believe, going back to put ups, that my mom knew that when I have the ability to not put myself down, it'll decrease my ability to put others down. And so I'm challenging you to put yourself up. Put you up. Now, this is interesting because what I'm not saying is put yourself up on a pedestal. And I think that that could be easily misconstrued, right? Like, there's a dangerous line between putting yourself up on a pedestal, but putting yourself up. Putting yourself up is your ability to not allow self limiting beliefs to control your behavior. Putting yourself up is your ability to not allow self limiting beliefs to control and to dictate your behavior, because everybody is going to experience self-limiting beliefs. They're going to happen, they're going to come. It's natural, right? It's normal. But when you have the ability to recognize the self-limiting beliefs and then reframe, replace that thought process, and almost start over and say, nope, this is it. And to realign yourself and to realign your thinking with what is fact and what is true in the direction that you want to head, that is powerful. That empowers you to cultivate the energy and the resilience that you need in order to be your best self, which then is going to contribute to your self esteem, which then contributes to your ability to develop confidence. And as a kid, I had no idea that this was the magnitude of this life lesson that my mom would just always say, and she would always speak to me. And I remember, there's not one instance, but I can remember just growing up in different spaces, whether I might have been talking again about myself or talking about somebody else. And she would say, put ups, Risa, put ups. In there, she didn't have to necessarily explain the concept in full more than once. I just got it. Like, I knew what she meant. It just meant we are not about to talk about other people. We are not about to demean other people. We're not going to put other people down. And that message right there, I feel like, is something if kids could get that, this generation, oh my gosh. So I was watching, let me story time. I was watching this show on Netflix, and it was talking about a jail experiment show. And the sheriff is, I haven't finished it, so I don't have too much context, not a spoiler alert by any means. But the sheriff of the jail facility was saying he wanted to do an experiment by leaving the doors open and taking the guard out. And so they're interviewing one of the guys, and his name is Tiny. And Tiny is 5'2" or 5'3". Regardless, he's tiny. He's a grown man and he's 5'2", 5'3". So he's saying he's always been tiny his whole entire life. And because of that, when he was younger, he would always get made fun of. And he went somewhere and there was this big guy, and I think the guy was a little bit older than him, and he was at a basketball court, and he ended up getting a knife from a cousin, and he was carrying the knife, and the guy started making fun of him. And Tiny was like, he was in the 8th grade, or he was 8 years old, sorry. And the guy started making fun of him, and Tiny was like, bet, wop, 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 wop. Stabs, bruh. Tiny was like, I've been stabbing big dudes ever since. I was like, shoot. So, what does that mean when it comes to this? It means there was a kid who felt necessary to make fun of this other kid. And the dude was like, I'm not about to allow you to make fun of me. And so instead of him putting Tiny up, instead of him bigging Tiny up, instead of him empowering Tiny, he ended up putting Tiny down. So Tiny was like, well, I'm going to put you down, unfortunately. Um, and that story, as extreme as it is, because now Tiny, at the time of that I saw this, is 35, and he had been in and out of the prison system for the last, I think, almost 20 years of his life because of that. And he never allowed anybody else to make fun of him ever again. And so the reason why I say that kids need this lesson is because if you can train kids to empower other kids, we will have a different world. If we can train kids to empower other kids, we will literally live in a different world, because bullying comes from a hurt heart. It comes from a wounded heart. And if I'm hurt, I'm going to try to figure out how I can hurt you so you can feel what I'm feeling. And if we can train kids to just put ups, nope, we don't put down, we do put ups. And if now you have a whole bunch of young kids who identify as leaders or have natural leadership ability and skills to be able to make the thought process like this viral, it changes the game. One of my friends, Erin Jones, she is doing a kindness movement, which I think is right, is very similar. How can we just be kind to people? The art of kindness, the skill of kindness, the fruit of kindness is lost on us. Um, Another example is there's a kid, I don't remember his name right now, but we were watching The Cave of Adullam with Jason Wilson. And one of the kids on there, he developed really bad eczema. And I want to say he was around 8 as well. And it was through middle school that he had started to, his eczema started to get really bad and broke out on his neck and his face and all of that. And he said he would go to school and kids would what? They would make fun of him. And they'd ask him what's wrong with his skin. And they would call him different names. And they call him eczema boy and all these other different things. And because of that, it impacted his behavior. And then it impacted his self-esteem. And it impacted all these things about him that where, thank God he ended up finding, Jason Wilson and his Cave of Adullam so he can get the assistance and help that he needs to be able to develop some self-esteem and also, learn how to defend himself, protect himself, and build up his confidence and all those amazing things. But again, his internal demise came at the hands of some kids who felt, instead of picking this young boy up, we're gonna put him down. And so it's interesting to me to think about how easy it is for us to think negative thoughts about ourselves. It's also very easy to think negative thoughts about others and to speak them out loud. And I think negativity, I just don't, I've said this before, I just do not understand why negativity is so popular. Like, it's easier for our brains to think negative. It's easier for us to speak negative about ourselves and others. It's people like reading headlines that have something to do with negativity. Like there's so much drama everywhere. Like we're drawn to negativity, and it's so much harder to be positive. And I think it might just be one of the wonders of the world on why is that the way that it is. But I have zero idea. But it's something that um, I want to do some more digging on to see if there's some science around it. And to give you a little bit more information, I'm so interested in the thought process between positive and negative that my first tattoo says change negative mindset, have positive life. And I didn't think about that till this very moment. And I got this tattoo at 15 and it says change negative mindset, have positive life. And I remember being outside of Sumner High School the summer of my sophomore year of high school. And we had a high school game and my coach, I don't know, said something, bothered me, was mean, I don't know, something like that. I didn't play much. I don't remember the scenario. All I remember was I went outside the gym after our game, after our team meeting, and I had the ability to think negative thoughts about something. And I promise you, my mom's words and something came up, just there's power in the life of the tongue, speak life into myself and put ups. And in my way, I said, okay, if I change my negative mindset, I have the ability to have a positive life. And this is at 15 years old. So, of course, 15-year-old me was like, bet, we going straight to the shop. We got to get this tatted. Um, and I spent $30 on my first tattoo. But it has been an amazing reminder for me that if I have the ability to change my mindset, I can have a positive life. I cannot control all of my thoughts, but I can coach my thoughts and my emotions in the direction that I need them to go. And that is why I'm still speaking this message here 20 years later. And I still speak this message, not still, but I speak this message to all the kids that I work with, is to understand that our mindset is an asset. And when I firmly believe that my mindset is an asset, I move different, I speak different, I think different, I act different, I treat people different. When you see your mindset as an asset, you literally treat it as such. And attached to our mindset is how we talk. And not necessarily just talk about ourselves, but also talk about others. So what I want you to get from this is I want you to speak life. What do I mean when I say speak life? Life is not not necessarily the thought that life be life in, but life in the sense of fullness. Life obviously is the opposite of death, and we want life and we want life abundantly. We want life in a prosperous way. We want life in a joyous way. And so we want to speak life into people. We want to speak life into things. We want to bring things from our vision into fruition. We want things to exist. And when we have the ability to speak abundance and existence and power into people, places, and things, that changes the game in any way. So like I see myself as an investor into people, places, and things. And if I know that my mindset is an asset and I have the ability to invest into other assets by utilizing my mind and by my tongue, by speaking life into things, that means I can literally add value and create more value out of that thought process. So if you can train yourself to speak life into people, places, and things, you become a value adder. Period. If you become somebody who says, I'm only going to speak life into any situation, if it adds, if it increases the value of this thing, if it adds existence, if it adds prosperity, if it adds abundance, if it adds oomph and gusto and zeal, it adds all of those things. I don't know if zeal is the word, then that's what I want to do. That's the direction that I want to go. And again, I always want to make sure that this isn't hitting on no toxic positivity um, because sadness happens. It's a part of being human, right? And so we're not denying our humanity and we're not denying that negative thoughts don't exist. We're just saying that we have the ability to coach ourselves in the direction we want to go. We're going to allow ourselves to feel what we need to feel. And that's super important. But on some everyday type stuff, when you're not in the midst of grieving, when you're in the midst of building, you're in the midst of trying to get after it, that you need to know and make sure that you are speaking life into situations, but also that you're downloading life into you. And I think that is just not that is just as important as your ability to speak like you need to download life into you. And this is something that came up more for me over the last couple weeks is how do I download? I need to download more. I need to pour in more. I need to be invested into more. And not necessarily do I need to consume more content, but I need to digest more wisdom based content that is going to influence me to pour out more wisdom onto others. And whether that is not whether, but it's from people that I trust, sources that I trust that I know also seek wisdom, and me being led. And because I'm always pouring out and I'm giving, and I want to make sure that my ceiling doesn't stop, that my cup continues to overflow into other folks because I'm continually being downloaded into, I'm continually seeking life and life abundantly and being led by those who are also doing that. So that way I can be a leader who is doing that for those that I lead. And so I encourage you to do the same, is to think about what are you consuming, whether that be from social media or from TV or, whatever spaces that you consume. What are you consuming, and do you have a filter on that? Do you have a time limit on that? Do you have, like, what is it? Like, there's certain things that my spirit and soul just can't handle because I just don't care to consume everything, because I know that it'll disrupt, or has the ability to impact me in it's also words that I'm speaking, right? We're talking about speaking life. And so um just something to be conscious of. But also, when I say speak life, be committed to abundance. Be committed to more. Be committed to living. Be committed to living to the fullest. And that starts with our thought process. That starts with how we see ourselves. That starts with how we see others is impacted by the lens at which we see ourselves. And so the next piece of that, when I'm saying speak life, is I want you to think about the power in the tongue. Power in the tongue. It's so crazy that our tongue is just this one little muscle in our mouth, but it has so much power. And a lot of people use it as a weapon. A lot of people will use their tongue as a weapon. Now, that could go back to, you can connect the other, like your voice box and all those kinds of things to it. But essentially, it all comes through the tongue. And you have the ability to choose how you want to use this tool. Your tongue is a tool. Do you want to use it as a weapon to hurt folks? Or do you want to use it as a tool to build people up? Right? Like, it can go either way. Do you want to use it as a tool to build or a tool to destroy? And that is something that we need to think about more and more, is our tongue is a tool. Do you want to use it to build people up or to break people down? And the only way that that happens is if you value, one, others, but you also value the thoughts that you think. Not necessarily just about others, but how, again, you think about yourself. If my self esteem is low, it's going to impact how I treat other people, because I cannot treat you better than I think about you. And that comes to myself and that comes to others. So if I have the ability to speak a certain way about myself and speak a certain way about other people, that goes to how I think about me. And so that means my thought process is off, which takes me right back to the thought process prior to this is about, what am I downloading? Am I downloading ideas and thoughts and images that diminish me, that disrespect me, that disregard me, in my humanity? Do I download things that have a disregard um, for who I am? Do I download things that have a disregard, that are disrespectful? Like, there's certain things that I just cannot tolerate because it disrespects who I am to my core, or it disrespects other people. And I've had to be more intentional with my speech, even when it comes to having inclusive language. And this is something that I recognize with other people who do human work and human service, when in the sense of, like, they're either motivational speakers or teachers and things like that, and just how they talk about folks. And I've talked about this before, but um when folks consider, how do I want to say this? I'm going to say it, but it's not how I say it. When people say, "Oh yeah, homeless people," like that's not it. We're not housed people. It's people who are experiencing homelessness. And the reframing of that sentence shows in my eyes, a reframing on how you see them and their humanity, right? You're not connecting it to their lack of having housing. And I think that's important because it goes back to often how we treat, right, other people. Another big one I cannot stand is at risk youth. I say youth who are at risk of losing hope, youth who are at risk of not developing self esteem and confidence, youth who are at risk of living out their purpose with confidence. Why? Because it positions them as youth, which is the first piece, which it centers their humanity, and then we're talking about a situation that they're in. And this is important because, again, there's power in the tongue. So if I'm only seeing you through the lens of your despair, I'm not seeing you wholly, right? It's almost like saying I don't see color, which is also something that is super dangerous to say. And so, even to this one that's just been really, really big for me lately, um, I started to and I'll be truthful about this. I started to recognize speech in reframing of sentences in the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, probably 2019 is when I really started to be more inclusive in my speech and understanding just how you say stuff. When it came more so to, I would say, ableism and obviously, pronouns and in situations like that. But when it came to youth who are at risk, I'd probably say around 2015, 16, when I really started to work in organizations that served, and literally they would say at risk youth. We serve at risk youth. And I was like, there's something wrong with that. Like, that doesn't make sense. So then I started changing my verbiage when it came to folks who are experiencing homelessness. But then, um, as I started working in DEI spaces in the EDI Cares program at Pierce, I started working with and recognizing more folks who have disabilities and recognizing how important it was to make sure we have inclusive language. And one of the things that I stopped saying was walk in purpose. And I think that this is really important because a lot of people are always like, you got to walk in your purpose. You got to walk in your purpose. You know what I mean? People don't walk. And this hit home that much more um, within the last couple months because my dad lost his leg and was amputated and he could not walk. So he was rolling in his purpose. And now he is learning how to re-walk again. But I just think, again, simple little things that we say on a daily basis that we don't recognize how those things can exclude other people. And it goes back to having power in our tongue. Now, this doesn't mean you have to try to speak perfect all the time beyond the money and never make mistakes. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means have your heart open to understanding that your words have power. Into that, there could be another way to reframe things of how can we be inclusive in speech. And so, how this applies to the topic of put ups, you could be inadvertently putting somebody down. If I'm just saying, I want you to stand on business and walk in power and be 10 toes down. You know how many, like, I just disrespected my dad to the 10th degree because before he lost his leg, he only had 5 toes. He had his toes cut off. Like, he couldn't really stand on business. He couldn't be 10 toes down. And now he couldn't walk in his purpose. And that's just one human being. And so, and there's multiple people out there. There's we watched recently um a oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was on Prime with Jennifer Lopez and the one of the kids, the young men from When They See Us, and he was. I'm gonna have to throw the graphic up here because I can't remember anybody's name right now. But he was a young man who he had one has one leg, and he ended up being a national wrestling champion, and he just ended up doing some super super dope stuff. His story was super inspiring because again, he had one leg, and he was on the wrestling team at. I'm butchering all these details, y'all. But he was on the wrestling team. Was it USC? Maybe not. It was. I don't know. Anyways, go watch the movie. I'm gonna have to put it up here and put the information up so you can go watch it. But anyways, right? So he was a student who had one leg and he used crutches to run, and he climbed the stairs. Like he still did everything that all of his teammates with two legs can do. And I bring him up in this situation because just you have to think broader than your everyday life. Like these cats on his team, had no idea that they would end up having a teammate who had, one leg. And there's a lot of cats who doubted him, rightfully so. There's people who made fun of him. And then there'd be people who would try to take him out, obviously using the one leg that he did have. And then there's another guy who's a wrestler who was born without any legs. And so it's just, he just got two arms and he's a wrestler. And there's plenty of other people out here in the world who have multiple different, um, uh, I don't want to say ailments, but have multiple different diversity for lack of better words at this moment. Um, that are maybe missing limbs or didn't have limbs or weren't born with them or had to have them removed or whatever the case may be is or may not be able to see. And just this is why diversity is so beautiful, because the human experience is not just one exact way. And this is going to take me back to what I said at the beginning about kids need to learn how to pour and speak life into everybody, because not everybody is the same. And the kids who do not value humanity to its fullest, they will take that and they will look at somebody who is different from them and they will distort it and they will be mean. And that will impact those kids, that has ability to impact the other kids' feelings and their self-esteem, which impacts their confidence and all of that. And so all this goes back to the ability and the power to put yourself up. And when you have the ability to put yourself up, it increases your ability to put others up and not put them down. And so to remember that there is power in the tongue. And as much as you remember that there's power in your tongue, it's important for us to speak life into our kids so that way they can do the same thing. Into whether that is your kids in your home or kids that you lead or young adults or whoever it may be. Use your tongue to speak life into people, because people will feel that. It'll come off in the way that you treat them. And so the other two thoughts that I have, and then we're going to close this practice out, is I want to really go back to how you talk about you. How you talk about you. I've brought up self-esteem multiple times. We just had an episode on self-esteem a couple episodes back, and we'll continue to talk about self-esteem because we have to be able to have a strong foundation of self-esteem before we build self-confidence and craft confidence. Because if I take all hits personal, I won't be able to leverage the resilience necessary in order to have craft and self-confidence. And so being able to put yourself up is necessary when it comes to self esteem, and it's necessary when it comes to confidence. And it all goes back to how I talk about me. If you look in the mirror or you don't look in the mirror, and that's a sign as well. Some people don't have the ability to look into the mirror because they're so disgusted with what they see. That right there is a telltale situation that we have some work that we need to do. And a lot of that could go back to how others have treated you, how others have talked about you. But it's time for you to take back the reins and say, all right, I got to fix the way I talk about me. I got to take my voice back. I got to advocate for me more. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who struggle with being able to advocate for themselves because they don't advocate for themselves to themselves. So they can't advocate for themselves in other spaces outwardly because they don't know how to advocate for themselves to themselves. They don't know how to keep their word to themselves. They don't know how to show up for themselves. And so they can't do that from an outward space because they've trained themselves to not be able to do it internally. And so if you have limiting beliefs, this can be something that you continue to perpetuate and you allow yourself to believe. Like self-limiting beliefs are literally how they sound. They are beliefs that you believe. They are thoughts that you believe about you that then limit your destiny. And so we have to get back to, how do we talk about us? How do you talk about you? That's my question for you right now is how do you talk about you? To me, how somebody talks about themselves tells me everything I need to know about them because there's an aura, there's an energy, I read the body language, I see it. Like how you talk about you tells me everything I need to know about you. Or your lack of ability to struggle to talk about you tells me everything that I need to know about you. And for the good and for the bad. But but how you talk about you tells me how you think about you. And that's what's most important is we can't live out our purpose with confidence if we can't think about ourselves in a confident direction. And what makes me so sad about that is that more times than not, it is based off of something that somebody else said or did to you. You most likely didn't like you didn't jump to being like, "Oh, this is wrong with me." You had it's like somebody had to tell you that this said thing was wrong or this said thing was off or this was abnormal or whatever it was. And again, it all goes back to kids in childhood. Whether that came from adults, unhealthy, toxic adults in your life, or unhealthy, toxic, immature kids, or unhealthy, toxic, immature adults, however you want to say it. Um, but when we can figure out how do we talk to us in a way that adds value to our identity, our existence, this prevents us from putting ourselves down. When you make a mistake, what's the first thing you say? When you make a mistake, what is the first thing you say to yourself? Is it, man, I know it. I knew you couldn't do it. Man, you're so dumb. Like, I cannot. Oh, it hurts my heart when I hear somebody say, I'm so dumb. Even when they say it in a joking manner, but it's like they say it in a joking manner to make it seem like you're joking when you know like because you know that it's kind of like you're trying to make light of it. That's not, no, we don't do that. That's not light. We're literally people and we literally are so quick to be it's easy to just talk, I'm so dumb. Man, no, you're not. You made a mistake. You're so human. Man, I'm so human. You know what else I can't stand now that I'm thinking about this? Is I won't even like my mom drilled this into my head so tough that I firmly believe so tough that there's life and death in the power of the tongue and to speak life that I won't even be like, haha, I'm dead. No, I'm not. Haha, I'm alive. Like, I don't even know. Why do I want to speak? I'm dead. Like and I'm dying. I'm crying. I'm crying. I would prefer to say I'm crying because why do I want to speak? I'm dead. If it's funny, just let it be funny. But I gotta die because it's funny. It's kind of like Cat Williams. He was like, make you go deaf. Like yes, it's funny, but let me just cry. I don't want to die. Um, but there's so many different sayings out there that like even dead skull face. No, don't. Like I just don't think it's a game. I'd rather speak life. And some people might say, man, you're too dope. Don't care. I don't care because I want to protect. I want as much life as possible. There's enough death and deadness and toxicity and things going on around me that if I can protect it to the degree that I can, that's what I'm going to do. So when you make a mistake, how do you talk to yourself? When you do something that you think you wasn't supposed to do, how do you talk to you? How do you coach yourself up? Like, what skills do you have and what tactics do you use to get yourself back on track to know, okay, boom, this was human. I'm cool. Like, can you coach yourself up? And one way that you coach yourself up is literally by enforcing put ups and not put downs. Can you coach yourself up? Put ups, not put downs. The next thing is going back to the thought process of I can't treat you better than I think about you, which goes back to us. I have to think about me in the right light, through the right lens. Because when I can do this and I can demand myself to have put ups about myself and not put downs, it literally encourages me and cultivates a new energy inside of me that has the ability to permeate through me on to others. And it also allows you to cultivate a sense of others awareness, social awareness, and relationship management to the degree of like, ooh, I'm thinking about you through this lens. There's something about you that, maybe bothers me. And it's cool. You don't have to like everybody. Absolutely not. You don't have to like everybody, but you have to be able to catch when you don't like somebody, because you can't fake relationship. It's gonna come out. Like, you can't treat anybody past the degree that you feel about them. And so if you're going to be like that and you want to be a good human baseline, you want to be somebody that's kind, you want to be known as somebody who gives off good energy, you want to be a leader who leads for the people, you want to be inclusive, you gonna run across some folks that you don't like, period. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you're not gonna like yourself sometimes, you're not gonna like other people you do life with. Like, that is so normal. Okay. But when you're starting to think of folks through that non like lens, that is giving a gateway to a direction that I promise you don't want to go down. Because when you start to think about folks through that lens, then it becomes easier to have all these negative thoughts like, man, they do this and man, they do that. And then when you start to think through that lens, it's going to be easier for you to start speaking to yourself about them and speaking to others about that person through that lens as well. And all that does is cultivate and fester, cultivate and fester. And then now you start to snap. Now you start to be mean. Now you're cold. Now you're treating them a certain way. Now you're starting to fight. Like, so many other destructive relational behaviors come out of how you thought about somebody, versus when you have the first initial thought and feeling and recognize, ooh, I don't like you. Okay, cool. I may not like these certain things about you, but I'm not going to allow myself to build up a trail and a mound of toxic thought process and energy behind that. I'm not going to feed into that. So, to close this out, I'm so grateful. Let me say this before I even say that. Am I perfect at all this? Nope. And that's given, right? Y'all know on here, perfection has no place when it comes to peace. Perfection has no place when it comes to developing confidence. Perfection has no place when it comes to purpose. And so these are still things, like I talked about at the beginning, is like, I just want to make sure that I'm putting myself up, I'm bigging myself up, and I only receive that from others and I only give that to others. Does it make it easy? Absolutely not. Especially in these internet streets, anybody will say anything that they want to try to pull you down. And so seek joy, seek life, speak life, find it in others, find it in people who also demand that same level of intentionality. Give it to yourself first, so that way when you do go seek it, you're not seeking it out of thirst. You know what I'm saying? Like, get that download from other people, from others, whether it's from the internet, or you're getting this download from me, you're getting the download from other people who also seek that. But do all that you can to limit the amount of self-limiting beliefs that you have. Do all that you can to limit the how those self-limiting beliefs try to control you. In order to do that, you got to start with being able to be intentional with put ups, not put downs. Don't allow yourself to make a habit out of putting down other people. Don't allow the people around you to make a habit of putting down other people and also putting down themselves. Um, I'll end with this. I've been talking. My dad, as I shared, he's been going through a lot of different life changes, and it's easier for him right now to dog himself. And I've been like, nope, don't, you can't talk about my dad like that. Nope, we're not doing that, right? Because I have to remind him, like, you're going through a lot. You're going through a lot of life changes, and it's easy for somebody who is having to literally start over physically and relearn how to walk and adjust to this life. The first thing that the enemy is going to attack is your brain. You got to protect your mind, because when your brain and your mind is attacked, it develops and cultivates thoughts. And when those thoughts get cultivated, it's easy for them to seep through your heart. And when they seep through your heart, they come out through your mouth. So I'm asking you to protect your brain and to guard your heart, because out there comes, right here, out of this hole is going to come the power of life and death. So you have to be able to know how to not just speak life, but to think life over yourself and over others, and to catch that joint and throw it away and replace it with something else, because your life and other people's lives depend on how we think, how we feel, and how we speak. This is not a game, especially in a time as of now. So I encourage you guys to think about how you think about yourself. I encourage you to think about how you think about others. And I encourage you to enforce the rule only of put ups and not put downs, because I promise you that is game changing advice. And I thank my mom so much for imparting that into me. So now I can impart that same thought process into other people and do my part of making sure that we as a human race and humankind have the ability to actually be humans that are kind. So I appreciate y'all. Until next time, this is practice. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate for showing up. I love y'all. Until next time, Dr. Rees, peace.